Just to start off, skin gambling, I'm going to try today to give you, as you can read, a short history, what's happening right now, and where we are going to get a better understanding. Has anyone in the room played Counter-Strike before? Oh, nice. Okay, fair enough. Aside from her, is anyone aware of what skin gambling is? Okay. Does anyone know what skins are? Okay, fair enough. For the rest of the room, skins basically are a part of Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike is a shooter game. Most of you will know this. And skins are basically a visual component that change not the performance, but just what a gun looks like. Usually it's green or black, but now it's changed to having Hello Kitties on your gun while killing someone else. It's something special, specific for Counter-Strike. But I think I'll shortly explain the rest of it, but you'll get along while we go. First of all, before I dive into the history of esports gambling, I'm quickly just going to throw a few numbers. If you look at what worldwide, and well, some of it is off, but worldwide esports gambling is pretty big. We got a shutdown. The entire market got shut down. So the $5.5 billion in revenue per year is sort of what we had half of this year up till somewhere August. And as you can see, next year is going to be a lot smaller, but that's already the cash gambling that has evolved from skin gambling into cash gambling. More on that later. To compare this with actual markets that may give you a better feeling of the size, social casino, the track that's going to start tomorrow, in 2016 is approximately 4.4 billion. Estimates were, if skin gambling had not been interrupted, that it would have been 7 billion this year after only existing for 3 years. So I know, but just to give an idea of the size, tablet gaming as well is $9.8 billion. That has existed for a pretty long while, and then 1.8 billion for handheld gaming, Nintendo, etc., which has been around there for quite a long while. The fairy tale of CSGO. There's been a lot of drama, but I'm going to try and explain the psychology around the growth, which I think is essential to understanding how we got where we are right now. I'm going to start by asking a question, like, does anyone in the room have a sister or a brother? Which one of you guys is the oldest? Someone else is the youngest? Okay. I probably don't have to explain the stereotypes of being the oldest or the youngest kid in the family. Like, you are the best, and if something goes wrong, it's never your fault. That's usually what it is. I think if we have to look at Valve as being the parent, Valve, the developer of Counter-Strike, they had a kid, and that was Counter-Strike 1.6. And everyone loved it. There were a few bugs, but everyone was fine with it. But sort of, it was the graphical issues were there, and the gameplay could be better. I'm talking about the game, not the kid. But they got a new kid, and then that was Counter-Strike Source. And the thing is, usually when there's a new baby in the family's all like, oh, there's a baby. Look at how cute it is, and blah, blah, blah. But in this case, part of the family was happy that there was a new game. But part of the family was like, we don't care about the baby, we just want the old game back. And that was a divided family. And that's what happened with CSGO. So you had two scenes coexisting because they had to, and which is probably like being brothers and sisters as well, because, well, it's a love-hate relationship, I guess. You love yourself and you hate the other one. And that's really what it was. Source hated 1.6 and 1.6 hated Source. The thing is, there was a new version coming out, and sometimes it happens with brothers and sisters, and I keep referring to it, but it's the best example. Sometimes in their last breath, they unite right before dying. Like, they sort of, when everything goes, they sort of say, okay, it's fine, we'll leave the issues. And that's what happened with these two scenes. there was a new game coming out, and rather than hating on each other, they had to cooperate, and that made them a lot stronger. And if you compare this to usual games which just have a normal evolution, they just hop on to the next thing. But these scenes have followed the games for over 10 years. Some of them have devoted multiple thousands of hours into a game they loved and hated the other one, and they combined. So they realized that the love for each other and for the game was much larger, and they just could start being toxic towards other games, which is pretty normal for Counter-Strike. The thing is, to get there right now, and that's the first part, you have a community that is 1+1, but it's much more than just the two, because you have two player bases that have existed for a very long time, and you had the events. Each of these games could exist on its own, but eventually we combined it and it got a lot stronger. So that means you have double the player base, double the events, double the money for prize, as if you win one of these tournaments. And that started to grow eventually. And then you have a scene that loves the game. And after being over the fact that you hate each other, you have a community that is going on to be a self-regulating organ. And that's the thing. We have so much, everyone knows Twitch, right? But content creation within Counter-Strike got so big so fast, we grew out of our borders. And that's the thing, if you have the scenes, you combine it with creating the content yourself, you have a very powerful community. And I have to agree, League of Legends, Dota 2, these games have the same thing, but this is a different way of approaching the mainstream area. And the mainstream, well, obviously right now you have a lot of the endemic companies that were there, like Samsung, SanDisk, Intel. They've been around for quite a long while. But we've seen a growth towards sponsors that are not just your usual sponsors. I don't know if anyone knows that in America right now, Counter-Strike is being streamed on TV, E-League. It's been very popular. The second season has been announced. And a funny bit is, you know, Snickers, they have their slogan where they say, "You're not you when you're hungry." And they show a part of the biggest fails on live TV. They show this with the slogan, "Snickers, you're not you when you're hungry," which is, I mean, it's a good adaptation. But you see that Mountain Dew, Coca-Cola, Pinnacle, like, everyone's gradually going towards being a mainstream sponsor of these events. And that's a precedent for esports. That's the community growth. That's one part. And then we go on to something that's a bit different. And that's the gambling part. So you have these skins, and essential to understanding why it got so popular, and I don't know if there are any app developers in the room, but it's really essential to understand why it got so big so fast. I've written down skins: speed, simplicity, social, and obviously the skins. But these are 4 factors that are actually 3 + 1. The thing is, the skins, you can acquire them pretty fast. It's really easy. You just acquire them by playing. You get the skins at the end of the game, and you can use them, trade them, and it's a social aspect. Like, you can brag about having the coolest skins. The thing is, this stuff, if you like skins, if we go back a bit, why would you play a computer game? If you play a computer game, you like the speed, you like the adrenaline, you like the simplicity and the social aspect of it. So it's not just, okay, the skins fit perfectly in the scenario, but if you're a gamer, you're logically inclined to like skins. And that's something I'll come back later on, but it's one of the biggest challenges for casinos, social casino, and sports just in regular, because they don't have this natural bridge between them. The thing is, obviously, the skins, we started gambling with it. So many of these skins have a value of $1, $2, but some of them go up to, and mind you, you're paying for just a bunch of pixels, a few thousands of dollars for just a visual component. But these skins were being used as a wager in esport games. So imagine if I would ask you, for example, I'm going to ask you, if I say I'm going to put $5,000 on the table and someone in the room is going to flip a coin. Would you put $5,000 next to it if the coin was favoring your side and you could take it all? But if you wouldn't favor it, you would lose it? Probably you wouldn't. I mean, it's a lot of money. Some of these games went up to, the largest one I've personally seen is $180,000 against $180,000 in skins. That's a house. And the biggest part was the house was taking 10%. Like normal casinos, that's 1%, 2%. Some of these online casinos, that's more, but 10%, that's huge. If you go back and think that this was supposed to be a $7 billion market, I guess you can count. It's not just the coin flips, it was jackpots. You had the esports book as well, so just regular betting on like football, you would bet like who's gonna win, who's gonna make the first goal. That sort of stuff is coming right now. It existed, but we are changing towards it with cash. But obviously, most of you will know, there were a few scandals. A few players have been banned because they did match fixing. And I think probably the thing that got, well, esports gambling on the menu of all the mainstream media is the scandals around the YouTube streamers who said, I found this website where you could bet on and I won a lot of money. You should check it out. But they already had a really big subscription in their YouTube fan base. They had a lot of fans already, and they just said, hey, I found this website. They didn't disclose that they were the owners of the website. Streamers on Twitch, he's a famous gambler. Mo has done exactly the same. He said like, hey, you have to check this out. I'm winning a lot of money, but they gave him the roles beforehand, so he knew, hey, I can lose some money, but then I will win big if I play this one. But it was not his money. They just gave him credits, and he got paid more than $100,000 just to do this for a certain amount of time. And it's not just that. There were organizations who were, well, the owners of esports organizations had stakes in some of these websites. So it's one big, messy scandal. The worst part was more than 20% of these gamblers were underage. So imagine $7 billion, 20% of that is for minors. And it's interesting because I will probably see a few of the casino corporations thinking like, hey, this is great, this is a good trend, but that's for later not good because you have an unregulated scene, no laws, no protection for the kids because this is an easy game, but it's not a game, it's real money. Like parents who had their credit cards being used without them knowing, kids just being sneaky, that's why obviously it had to be stopped. But many of these websites did nothing, and that's why it sort of got out of hand really fast, really quick. And I think the unregulated part is probably one of the biggest challenges in the present. So if we fast forward to what we have now, most of the skin betting has gone. Some of the websites still offer skin betting in certain countries, but they will probably, I know some of them personally, they are getting a lot of pressure from, well, legal entities. It's not going to take long. One of the workarounds that they've done is say, I have skins, I upload them to a third-party website, they give me money, but the money is immediately being transferred to another website as a virtual currency. So basically it's just happening the exact same way, but they're using a third-party website. Problem is that skins are such a hard part of legally doing something against that it's gonna stay for a while. It's not gonna be that big. Predictions are that it's not gonna go even by 2020, not above 1 billion, but that's still a lot. I'm not sure how it will, it's a question for the future, but it's definitely not the way to go to. The biggest thing is going to be cash betting. Many of these esports books are transferring onto just providing the same services that are legal, but through direct cash deposits. And that's going to be a big thing because if you think back to the first slide where we already go from 600 million in this year to 3 billion next year, and by 2020 already up to 12 billion. That's a lot of money in 3.5 years for a new market. The thing is that the existing characters in the player's head, well, the characteristics of the players are already there, so it's not going to change. The demand is there, and we're probably just going to supply it, hopefully in a legal way. Before we go to the future, I've put a lot of stress on the psychological aspect of how we got here. And I think this is an interesting thing to see the esports enthusiasts, what their profile is, how are they thinking, why is it so popular, and why is it staying so popular? It seems that most of it has sort of faded out, but I'll give you an explanation. So what we usually think is that enthusiasts of online esports don't have a job or are studying, but the fun fact is that only 4% of really esports enthusiasts has no job, and 53% of them has a high income. So of all these enthusiasts, 53% is generally, globally, being rated as a high income. That goes immediately into being big spenders, especially in the mobile market. So if you just take gamers in general, 56% of them has never, ever paid money for a mobile app. But if you compare that to esports enthusiasts, not just the gamers but the enthusiasts, 26% has never spent money. That's half of them already gone just by being an enthusiast. And it gets worse. If you look at hardware, of the enthusiasts, 6% spends less than $50 per year on hardware. But 31% has a bigger budget than $600 per year to spend on hardware. That's 30% of all these enthusiasts are basically upgrading their PC every year, on average. And well, we've been talking about Brazil and South America quite a while in the previous presentation, but the involvement, and Brazil was a perfect example, the involvement in certain of these services. Brazil is, for the esports enthusiasts, 3 times more likely to have a Netflix or a Spotify subscription than regular gamers. Mind you, not just non-gamers, just regular gamers, just gamers who play casually. And that's also why it's really interesting to see why we should invest in them. Because most of these target audiences, for us the millennials, are very hard to target. If you look at casinos, most of their audiences are people over a certain age just spending their time in a casino, having fun. But you don't see youngsters, unless they really like poker, but you don't see them playing on the slot machines. They don't get the same energetic rush, the speed, the simplicity of playing on a slot casino. It's a different mindset. Slots don't work for, I know a few websites who tried to do slots for skin gambling, didn't work out, never broke through, just completely shut down. And well, I jumped further, but 54% of esports enthusiasts is between 21 and 35 years old. That's half of it. And that's very interesting, and I'm going to fast forward for the marketing, because your marketing is so not polluted. You have a very clear, non-diffused market share that you want to reach. Spectator-wise, pretty interesting. 40% of the spectators never plays any of the games they watch. So they watch games, but they don't play them. It's like watching football or soccer, wherever you come from, or baseball. I like to watch NBA, but I never play it. Esports is becoming this. And for certain parts, esports is replacing this. 15% has said that esports has replaced their watching time rather than watching regular sports. And that's an interesting one. The low revenue per fan. Right now, for every esports enthusiast, it's $3.5 per year. If you compare that to the NBA, that's $20 per year. And if you go to the NHL, that's $60. So by marginally increasing what we earn of enthusiasts, we can double it because it's only $3. It's been a lot to gather around, and it's a lot of focus on the psychological aspect, but what does this mean for me, for developers, social casino? What does it mean for you guys? One part is the psychology, and I'm gonna try and say it again. Esports naturally speaks to people who like the speed, simplicity. Gambling does the same thing. That's why normal casinos have issues. That's why sports have issues of getting to these markets. Growth in, well, the scene and how the gambling evolved, that's one part of the deal. And then the opportunity and the challenges that go with it to get rid of the underage gambling and to still be able to evolve. And that's where my company is heading to. Right now you have, per esports game, you have around 7 to 15 possible things you can bet on. Who's going to win, what's the amount of rounds. But if you look at a football game, for example, you have thousands of opportunities. You don't have that yet in esports. That's where live betting comes in. We're working on a platform that allows people to have over 1,000-fold of options per game to bet on. So if you can increase 7 to 15, maybe 20 to 1,000-fold per game, it's not gonna, your revenues are not gonna go 1,000-fold, but obviously you're gonna have a much larger options for these players to bet on. I can't tell much about it, but live betting will definitely be the next future for esports. And well, obviously the unique target audience, if you combine these 4 pillars, you get something, the R falls off and you get a new little brother. But it's a big brother, because rather than having the 2 bigger brothers being 1.6 and Counter-Strike Source, and the new little brother is CSGO, I think we should see the traditional sports, the traditional casinos, even traditional social casino and mobile developers as the big brothers, where this new esports market with a very useful target audience, this is the new little brother. And I think there should be a bridge between, I think, for example, me coming from the gaming side, being some of, I should say we are savvy entrepreneurs. And then you have the real corporate entities that have a professional way of doing this. I think if we can build a bridge, that could be the solution to being a good solution for the little brother, but then it can be big. And I'm gonna steal a quote from ESPN on this one. Esports and esports gambling is young, global, digital, and diverse. And it's probably everything that sports and casino is not. Not entirely, but I think that's probably where we're going through. My email's on it. I'll be around if you do have some questions. Let me know. Thank you for listening.